He slid the wedding band onto my finger, the cold platinum a stark contrast to the warmth of his hand. His voice was a low rumble against my ear, a private promise in the echoing silence of the empty chapel. You are my saint, Amelia. He kissed my knuckles, his eyes dark with an intensity that was his alone. Anyone or anything that dares to tarnish you, he vowed, his thumb stroking the diamond, I will burn to ash. 5 years later, as he drove the knife into my belly with his own hands, I finally understood. His definition of anyone included me, the 5th anniversary of that promise, and my heart hammered against my ribs with a secret joy. I clutched the ultrasound report in my pocket, the flimsy paper holding the weight of our 5-year-long wish, a child, our child. I slipped through the throng of guests at the masquerade gala, my sequined mask a shield of anonymity, the superyacht, the Amelia, his grandest gift to me, was alive with music and champagne, a floating island of opulence on the dark Miami Sea. My plan was simple, find my husband, Dante Volkov, and give him the surprise we had prayed for. Then I saw him. He stood near the stern, silhouetted against the moonlit water, a king in his domain, but he wasn't alone. A young woman in a whisper-thin white dress was pressed against him, her laughter tinkling like cheap glass. Summer Parker, the girl from the scholarship fund I had helped him choose 3 months ago. Her hands were on his chest, her head tilted back in a way that was both cloying and seductive. Dante's arm was wrapped securely around her waist. This wasn't a business meeting, this was a honeymoon, just not mine. The blood drained from my face, a cold wave of nausea washing over me, my body swayed, my shoulder bumping into a passing waiter's tray. A crash of champagne flutes shattered the festive air. Every head turned, including his. Dante's eyes, cold and hard as obsidian, locked onto me. He didn't see his wife. He saw a clumsy stranger who had ruined his moment. His brow furrowed in irritation, and he snapped his fingers. 2 of his men who usually greeted me with a respectful Mrs. Volkov, started moving towards me. That goddamn bitch, he growled, his voice carrying across the deck, loud enough for me to hear. She's ruined the honeymoon I meticulously prepared for my wife. He pulled Summer closer, whispering to her, baby, you always wanted to see sharks, didn't you? Let's bleed her and draw them in. My blood ran cold, freezing in my veins. This wasn't a joke. I knew that tone. It was the voice he used right before he destroyed an enemy. Before I could scream, a rough hand grabbed the back of my head. My face was shoved violently into the top tier of a towering designer cake on a nearby table. Cream and frosting clogged my nose and mouth, the sickly sweet smell mixing with the terror of suffocation. I struggled, my lungs burning, my nails clawing at the tablecloth. I could hear Summer's delicate, fake gasp, oh, darling, isn't that a bit much? Dante's cold laugh was my answer. He pulled her into a possessive embrace. Baby, you're just too kind. A bitch like this ruins our trip. I can't let her off easy. He gestured to the dark water. You wanted to see sharks. Remember, today, you get a front row seat. I couldn't believe this was happening. This monster, this cold-blooded stranger, couldn't be the same man who had worshipped the ground I walked on, the man who had carved my name into the list of untouchables in both the legitimate world and the underworld, the man whose entire fortune, locked away in his office safe, was legally designated to me as the sole beneficiary. But the hands dragging me from the cake were real. The 2 bodyguards held me fast. Bleed her, Dante ordered, his voice as flat and merciless as a funeral dirge. Draw them in. My throat was raw, but I fought, screaming, my nails digging into the arms of my captors, drawing blood. A polished leather shoe stomped down on my hand, a sickening crunch echoed in my ears, followed by a blinding flash of pain. My finger was broken. I saw my own bone snap. This was real. The raw instinct for survival took over. I had to beg. I reached out with my good hand, my fingers trembling as I grasped the cuff of Dante's trousers. Tears and cream streamed down my face. MMPH. I tried to speak, to plead, but the cake in my throat muffled any sound. I clutched my stomach, a sudden, sharp cramp twisting my insides. Ah, a pained cry escaped my lips as I curled into a ball. A line of warm, sticky blood trickled down my inner thigh, staining the pristine deck a horrifying crimson. In my desperate struggle, the folded ultrasound report slipped from my pocket. It fluttered onto the deck, landing right in Dante's line of sight. The name was obscured, but the words confirmed pregnancy were starkly clear under the deck lights. Dante looked down at me, his gaze colder than the ocean depths. Oh, he sneered, a cruel smirk twisting his lips. A pregnant bitch. He crouched down, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper meant only for Summer. Perfect. Now my baby gets to see what it looks like to feed a live fetus to the sharks. My world shattered into a million pieces. I writhed on the deck, my body a canvas of agony. The blood continued to flow from between my legs, pooling beneath me like a dark halo. No. I shook my head wildly, trying to crawl away, to protect the life inside me. My pleas were just pathetic, choked whimpers. Dante simply watched, the cruel smile never leaving his face. He pulled a Glock 19 from the back of his waistband, the metallic click of the safety disengaging echoing louder than my own frantic heartbeat. He pressed the cold barrel against my knee. First, we break her legs, he said, his voice casual, as if discussing the weather. Don't want her ruining the show. I looked up, my vision blurred by tears and pain, and saw only the silhouette of a demon. Despair consumed me. Bang, the bullet tore through my kneecap, a scream ripped through me, but it was silenced by the gag his man had stuffed into my mouth. It was just a muffled, animalistic cry of pure agony. Blood gushed from the new wound, painting the deck in yet another shade of red. Through the haze of pain, I finally saw her face clearly. Summer Parker, dressed in her pure white dress. She looked like a fragile angel standing beside the devil, but her eyes, they were gleaming with a sick, ecstatic light. She was feasting on my suffering. Darling, she's bleeding so much, Summer cooed, snuggling into Dante's arms while her lips curled into an uncontrollable smile. Dante stroked her back gently. Don't be scared, baby. A bitch like this isn't worth a second thought. My heart felt like it was being physically ripped from my chest. 3 months ago, Dante had told me he wanted to start the foundation, to sponsor a student in need, and he'd asked for my help. I was the one who picked Summer's file, orphaned, brilliant, surviving on scholarships. Her photo showed a girl with clear, innocent eyes. Dante had even praised my choice. The irony was a bitter poison in my throat. String her up, Dante commanded, nudging my blood-streaked chin with the toe of his expensive shoe. shoe. The blood is more interesting when it drips into the sea, drop by drop. The clatter of iron chains was the soundtrack to my descent into hell. The other guests on the yacht continued to sip their champagne, their laughter a distant, mocking echo. I was hoisted upside down over the side of the yacht, the sea breeze a cold slap against my torn skin, carrying the coppery scent of my own blood. Warm life pulsed out of the hole in my knee, trickling down my ankle before falling into the dark water below. Each drop blossomed into a dark red flower on the surface of the vast, blue sea. Darling, look, Summer shrieked, pointing at the water. In the moonlight, several dorsal fins sliced through the waves. The gray-blue skin of the sharks glinted with a cold, dead light. My vision was blurring from the pain and blood loss, but I could still see one of Dante's men, a man who used to call me Mrs. Volkov with a deferential bow, approach me. He held a combat knife. He plunged the blade into my abdomen and twisted. A guttural, bestial sob tore from my raw throat. The first shark leaped from the water, its rows of serrated teeth less than a foot from my belly. The foul stench of its breath and the sticky spray of seawater covered my chest. Time it, Dante said calmly, lighting a Cohiba cigar, his other hand playing with a lock of Summer's hair. Cut the child out of her. Let's see how long the bitch lasts. My world turned scarlet. The henchman grinned, a grotesque mask of cruelty, and thrust his hand into the wound in my stomach. His fingers felt like cold iron tongs, churning inside me. My entire body convulsed in agony, but I couldn't even scream anymore. My voice was gone, shredded. You had this coming, bitch, he whispered in my ear, messing with our boss. With a sudden, brutal yank, he pulled. I felt something vital being ripped from my body. A hot gush of fluid erupted from the wound. The man held it up, a bloody, mangled mass in his hand. My uterus, my child, the child Dante and I had wanted for 5 long years was now a prop in a bloody spectacle. Throw it in, Dante ordered, his voice devoid of any emotion as he took a long drag from his cigar. My womb, with my baby inside, was tossed into the sea. It drew a crimson arc in the air before hitting the water. The sharks went into a frenzy. The churning of their gray-blue fins and the horrifying sound of tearing flesh was the last thing I was truly aware of. The sharks still look hungry, Summer chirped, her head tilted with a look of innocent curiosity. Darling, do we have anything else to feed them? Dante gestured towards me with his cigar. We have this right here, don't we? Summer covered her mouth in a perfect imitation of shock. Oh, can we really? I'm still a little scared.